Yes, better turn it on. Thanks for those in the gallery for reminding me. Good evening, everyone, and you too. I'd like to welcome you to this council meeting of Tuesday, the 19th of March 2024 at the Euroa Community Conference Centre. I'm Peter Stevenson, Administrator of Strathbogie Shire Council, and I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. We do acknowledge the traditional custodians of the places we live, work and play. We recognise and respect the enduring relationship they have with their lands and waters, and we pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Today we're meeting on the lands of the Tongarong peoples of the Eastern Kulin Nation, whose sovereignty here has never been ceded. This public meeting is being streamed live via our website, Council Meetings and Minutes Strathbogie Shire, and made available for public access on our website along with the official minutes of this meeting. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, it is assumed that your consent is given in the event that your image is broadcast to the public. It is also assumed that your consent is given to the use and disclosure of any information that you share at the meeting, including personal or sensitive information, to any person who accesses those recordings or minutes. Council considers that the recommendations contained in this agenda gives effect to the overarching governance principles stated in section 9(2) of the Local Government Act 2020. These principles are numbered 1 to 9 on page 2 of the agenda. We welcome the people in our public gallery and also those viewing this meeting through our live stream via our website. And as I said, this meeting is being held according with the Strathbogie Shire's governance rules. If we have technical difficulties during today's meeting, which means we're unable to stream the proceedings to the public, we will continue with the meeting given the public gallery is open. If an officer has a conflict of interest in a matter, they will be asked to leave the meeting and no discussion on the matter will commence until we are sure they have done so. The person will then be contacted to rejoin the meeting after the matter has been considered and the vote concluded. We have an apology this evening from Amanda Tingay, Director People and Governance. In terms of conflicts of interest, the Chief Executive Officer has declared a conflict of interest in closed business item 1. And moving now to confirmation of minutes, decisions of previous meetings. Confirmation of minutes, decisions of the council meeting held on the Tuesday, 20th of February 2024. I move that the recommendation becomes a resolution and is thus carried. Moving to petitions, correspondence was received in April 2022 from Colin and Josie Burton, which included letters from 4 adjoining residents, landholders of Neelands Road, Euroa, raising concerns with the road surface and dust concerns of Neelands Road due to increased traffic along this road for reasons outlined in their letters. Having become recently aware of these letters, it's now considered that they be deemed a petition for presentation to Council. And the recommendation is that Council accept the petition in relation to the road service condition and dust concerns of Neelands Road, Euroa, submitted by 5 residents of Neelands Road, Euroa, and 2, that the petition be referred to the Director Sustainable Infrastructure for consideration and response. And just a little bit of a background on our Meet the Administrator tour. We were advised that letters had been sent and should have been treated as a petition, and that's what we're doing. We're treating those letters, which are about the same subject, as a petition, and then we'll action it, that petition. So I remove that the recommendation becomes a resolution and is as such carried. I might just add too that we did receive another petition, but it only arrived late today, and that related to a request to continue the swimming pool season, but it couldn't be dealt with at such a late stage. And it will be coming to the council meeting in April. We do have governance rules and rules around submitting questions and submitting petitions, and I guess we need to follow them, otherwise everything breaks down. So, moving to item 9, report of administrator. So, as I said before, my name's Peter Stevenson and I'm council's administrator. I was appointed by the Minister of Local Government, or Minister for Local Government, under Section 230 of Local Government Act 2022, and my role is that I constitute the council. That is, I perform all of the duties, powers and functions of the council. And as I mentioned before, been undertaking conversations with our residents at the Talk to the Administrator sessions, with our most recent session held in Ngambie. I've been using this opportunity to also talk to people about the opportunity that the October 2024 council elections offers residents who offers residents to become involved in local government. So if you're thinking of standing, for council at the 2024 October elections, and you'd like to know more about council, our services, the new unsubdivided structure for the election and what's involved in becoming a councillor, then please keep your eye out for sessions we will be hosting commencing in late April, and they are as follows, with anticipated dates including Monday the 29th of April online between 7 and 8 p.m, Tuesday the 2nd of May in person at the Ngambie Lakes Regatta Centre from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m, Tuesday the 7th of May in person and online here at the Euroa Community Conference Centre 1 p.m. to 2 p.m, and Wednesday 8th of May online 7:30 to 7:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. I'm getting up early that day. As I said, those dates are included. There's likely to be more to come, and we'll be advertising these sessions widely, and of course including how to book those sessions. There will be a range of in-person and online sessions at differing locations and times, so that it gives people the widest possible range of options to participate. And I'll be participating in those and look forward to meeting each and every person that participates in those. The right to nominate as a candidate and the right of citizens to vote for a candidate that best represents them is a cornerstone of our democracy. And I encourage you to consider nominating to represent Strathbogie. It's an opportunity to move forward from the recent suspension and ensure good governance into the future. Moving on, recently I was invited to be the MC at Council's International Women's Day event at Tarbilk Homestead's private gardens. Guests were treated to 2 incredibly inspiring speakers, each offering unique perspectives on the theme Inspire Inclusion. Hayley Purbrick shared her insights on integrating environmental sustainability considerations into her family's winery business. Emily Quattrocchi, who is in a wheelchair as a result of a car accident, inspired guests with her incredible journey to a career in the film industry. She emphasised the importance of including individuals with disabilities in our daily lives and creating and accommodating facilities that enhance their daily experiences. This year has already seen lots of events take place across the Shire, and there are many more to come, including the Festival of Small Halls live music event at Avalon tomorrow night. And sorry, I've got to miss that one. The annual Heads of the River Rowing on Lake Ngambie later this month, and the upcoming Longwood carriage driving event in May. To energy. Now, Council has been actively advocating for improved energy security by engaging in discussions with AusNet and collaborating with our local member in the Federal Parliament, Helen Haynes, following the community's concerns in light of the recent months' widespread blackouts. We look forward to some positive outcomes from those advocacy actions. Further advocacy now in relation to Kerwin's Bridge here, well, that continues, and we have more pleas from the community to have it fixed. And you can see these on our wall of support for Kerwin's Bridge on our engagement site, Share Strathbogie. And so visit www.share.strathbogie.vic.gov.au to view this page and many other projects you can engage on and have your say. Artbox. Our Artbox is currently located at Jacobson's Lookout in the Ngambie, and it's been attracting great interest recently with the exhibition titled Anna Branch by Gus Lunig and Angus Cameron. It's the final exhibition in the location at Ngambie before Artbox travels up to Strathbogie, where it will be located in the grounds of the Strathbogie Memorial Hall. The first exhibition is by local Euroa artist Bruce Hargrave, so keep an eye out for details on his exhibition. Now, it's time to celebrate Harmony Week. Harmony Week occurs in March each year and includes the 21st of March, on Thursday, the United Nations International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. And the ongoing theme of Harmony Week is Everybody Belongs. And it is a time of cultural respect for all. And some may have noticed an orange flag flying at the Binney Street roundabout and in front of the old Ngambie Library site, which is formerly the Shire of Goulburn office. Orange is the colour chosen to represent Harmony Week, and traditionally orange signifies social communication and meaningful conversations. It also relates to the freedom of ideas and encouragement of mutual respect. Council flies this flag along with other community flags in accordance with Council's community flag flying policy and procedure. In celebration of Harmony Week, join us for a free screening of the acclaimed documentary Journey Beyond Fear, which is parental guidance required, at the Euroa Community Cinema on Thursday, 21st of March at 6 p.m, followed by an insightful talk with the filmmaker Robin Hewen. So secure your free tickets for the screening and gather more details at https://events.humantix.com/SSC-journey-beyond-fear, or make it easier, give customer service a call on 1-800 065 993. That's Harmony Day. And look, finally, in terms of what's happening and what's happened, I want to remind residents that if you have any questions about my appointment, having been reappointed on the 7th, or the appointment furthered on the 7th, please don't hesitate to contact me. My contact details are on the council website on the administrator page, or you can contact customer service, who will kindly pass your request on. I'm happy to speak with anybody who calls. Okay, public question time. And we've received 2 questions tonight from Helen Gwillam, representing Avenel Active, excuse me. Avenel Active emailed council on the 30th of the 11th 23 and the 3rd of the 2nd 24 for update on action 2.1.8, 2324 council plan update re Avenel Railway car park with no reply. Can we have a copy of council's background document for the action per agenda item 11.4.4 2021-25 council plan dash 2023-2024 6-monthly review? And question 2 was council reports in action 2.1.9, page 2324 council plan update re community safety at Avenel Railway car park. It will continue to look for opportunities to advocate. have an active request report from council of any advocacy in 23-24 to the Department of Transport and Planning or any agency. So in response, Helen, council officers have advised that they have made repeated attempts to contact the ARTC by phone, the owner of the subject property, during 23 and 24 without any response from this office. Correspondence was received in 2023 indicating that if council was proposing to utilise the area for community purposes, it would be required to lease the entire portion of the property. Consideration of council leasing the land and redeveloping it as a car park with the associated lighting, etc., will be subject to appropriate terms being negotiated with the ARTC, and should this be acceptable, appropriate budget being made available in council's future budgets. However, the ARTC did also inform council in recent discussions that the area would not be available for lease/development until the rail upgrade works are completed, as the ARTC has identified it as one of the many stockpile sites for the materials required for the upgrade. Subsequently, no budget allowance has been made for the lease or redevelopment of this land in the 24-25 budget preparations to date. The Sustainable Infrastructure Division will continue in its endeavours to reconnect with the officers at the ARTC to persuade them to provide it earlier and at terms that would benefit the community. And Helen, who isn't here, I should have said, isn't in the gallery tonight. But Helen, I have asked that John Harvey, Director of Sustainable Infrastructure, contact you to make a time to discuss this matter in more detail. So that's the end of public questions. All right, moving to officer reports, and we are at...
Order, Mr. Administrator. This meeting an open meeting or is it a closed meeting?
Tom, we've had this discussion before. Tom, Tom, okay. Tom, okay, please sit down and I'll explain. Please sit down and I'll explain. Please sit down.
You need to have an open meeting.
Tom, please sit down. I'm asking you to sit down. And you've raised this before, and I explained to you back then, yes, it is an open meeting. What we have here, I asked you to sit down. What we have here is an automatic door which was installed some years ago for the benefit of a councillor who was in a wheelchair. Now, the doors are closed for a whole range of reasons, not to keep people out, but for proper audio, for the air conditioning to continue or the heating to continue depending on the time of the year. But the door is not locked, and it just takes a press of a button to open it. And you don't even have to push them, they will open. So I think it's really disingenuous, Tom. You've been coming to these meetings for I don't know how long, but certainly you've been at every meeting that I've been at since I was a monitor and now since being an administrator. And I think it's just being disingenuous and really it's a game. You understand why it was put in place and you understand that no one is locked out of the meeting. So I think it's just unfair and I won't hear you on it again. Thank you.
What's your name?
Sit down, Tom, or I'll ask that you be removed. Well, sit down or I'll ask that you be removed. Now, moving to business. Strategic and statutory planning. Planning applications received and planning applications determined 1 to 29 February 2024. Now, right,
Director Frampton.
Director Frampton, please, can you give me just a few highlights there.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. As per Council's planning permit applications referral policy to Council, this is our standard monthly report that you have seen every month. This report provides a listing of all planning applications received in Attachment 1 and planning applications determined in Attachment 2 for the period of the 1st to the 29th of February this year. The latest available planning permit activity performance figures are also attached in Attachment 3. It's noted that there were 8 new planning applications received and 12 planning applications decided upon during this reporting period. Attachment 4 also provides an up-to-date listing of all current Victorian civil and administrative tribunal appeals where no decision has been made. There is a recommendation on page 7 of tonight's agenda for your consideration.
Thank you, Director Frampton. This monthly report continues the kind of level of activity that we've seen of late, and also the fact that the planners are getting through their work in good time. Where in terms of making decisions when the clock is ticking, we're probably above or more than above average within the state. That continues, and we're not the subject of VCAT very often. So I think that's a credit to the team. Not huge numbers, but it's a small team too, and they're kept on their toes. And to my mind, it's a good report. And the recommendation on page 7, I would move that it becomes a resolution that Council note the applications as stated in 1, and 2, note the report. So the recommendation becomes a resolution as such is carried. Okay, moving to infrastructure capital program delivery status 6-month report. And we'll ask Director Sustainable Infrastructure to give us some highlights here, if he may. Thanks.
Thank you. And through you, Chair. As part of the standard process of managing our capital items, particularly our plant, we've recently, sorry, I've started on the wrong report. The attachment number 1 gives you a tabulated status report at this time of our capital program delivery, of which this year is forecast at approximately $18 million, which is reasonably substantially greater than previous years. There is 1 or 2 of those items that won't be fully delivered this financial year. One of them being as an example, the Loxley-Nagambie Bridge, which was always going to be completed in the next financial year. So that hasn't necessarily slipped in its program, just naturally as a consequence of the size of the project will slip slightly into next year. And of course, Weir Road is expected to be completed this financial year. We are developing a traffic light system such that this report is easy to read. That being, if things are on time or before time, it's green. If it's behind time, it'll be in a red status. We have doing quite a bit of work in the financial reporting component, and where we are introducing a plus or minus 10%, where we put the items that are over budget at red, within the plus or minus 10% in amber, and less than 10%, i.e. behind schedule, in green. And that information will be provided to you as a supplementary report next month with those financial figures, as that's not a usual report that the group within the division are used to providing under my direction. So I will provide that report again to you with both the completion date status and the financial reporting related to their forecasted expected delivery times next month.
Thanks for that, Director Hargrave. And I've got to say, when we look at the table, there are a relatively small number in red, so that's a real positive. The bulk are green, which is good in terms of we're talking the timelines, and that's not bad considering the I suppose a couple of years of setbacks with the floods. So and recent taking the top off a road to repair it and finding out it's more degraded than, for example, than we thought. So that's not a bad outcome, and I do look forward to the report on the costings in the same kind of format, and that's a really helpful one to see the traffic light system. It does send your eye to the issues, and thank you for your work. Now, yeah, that certainly doesn't give the capital works is a huge part of what council does, and in 6 months that's a lot of work that's done. A report like this doesn't do justice to that, but on behalf of the community, I say thanks. And so the recommendation is that council note the progress of the 2023-24 capital works program, with most projects anticipated to be completed by the end of the 2023-24 financial year. That recommendation becomes a resolution and is carried. And I look forward to seeing where we land at the end of that financial year, at this financial year. Okay. And I think the next one is the contract 11.3.2 contract to purchase front deck mowers. Director Hargraves, can you give us a brief?
Thank you, Peter, and through you, Chair. This is the report related to the plant items that we are replacing. We've had a number of out front deck mowers for some time. The existing items are have reached the end of their usable period and should be replaced such that we get a reasonable return on their trade-ins, such that we actually provide best value for money on the outcome of these purchases. The procurement was done for the most part from suppliers on the Municipal Association of Victoria's Light Plant and Equipment Purchasing Contract, LP 20091. That is a contract that the Municipal Association of Victoria provides to all the councils across the state to accelerate or to help facilitate the purchase of like items across the state to get shared savings across the state. You'll see that we received 3 quotations, and from those the recommendation as per page 12 that the outcome of the request for quote is there in the recommendation that we purchase it utilising the MAV's Light Plant and Equipment Purchasing Contract LP 20091, and that we award the contract using that contract for an amount of $131,890,000, including GST, to Kubota Australia via their agent Bertoli Farm Machinery in Shepparton for the 2 mowers. The balance of the recommendation is there for you to determine.
Thanks very much, Rose. And it was an interesting one for me, not being familiar with the purchase of plant, but I did note that there was a huge difference in price, really, in the scheme of things, between the quotes and a good thing is that the successful tenderer isn't far away in Shep, so it's keeping some of the money nearby. And I did note too, which is it's something that I hadn't sort of thought of, and much like other fleets, you don't want to keep them until they're worth nothing. You keep them for a period, and I suppose sell them with some unexpended value. And it hadn't been something that I thought about before. But again, so you're trying to do your best at the front end when you purchase, and you're trying to do the best as you're shifting the old stuff. So it's probably not an exact science, but I can see there's a bit of work gone in there, and you're going to get 2 new machines, and let's hope that and I expect it will, the satisfaction surveys will continue to show the support for the council's parks and gardens, which they're largely used, I expect. So, all right. I'll better get to the recommendation, and there are, where are we?
Page 12.
You give me a book with too many pages, and I'll just have to lose the page. Here we go. So there are four points under the recommendation. We note the outcome of the request for quotation process. We award the contract to Kubota Australia by their agent in Shepherd, and I'm summarising authorised officers to advise the unsuccessful quoters, and lastly authorise the Chief Executive Officer to award the contract by signing the letter of award and so on. The recommendation becomes the resolution as such is carried. All right, moving to 11.3.3, Project Collaborative Digital Innovation, CODI for short, IT Systems Alignment Enterprise Resource Planning ERP Solution. That's a mouthful. Now, I'll hand over to you, Chief Executive, for some highlights.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. At Strathbogie, we acknowledge that working together in partnership brings benefits. Through partnerships such as the North East Rural Council's collaboration group, we continue to progress efficiencies through our shared services project and our funded digital transformation project, which is short for PODI. And this project encourages economies of scale and allows councils to focus on doing things well, but using contemporary business systems. Systems such as property, building and regulatory services, systems for information management, cyber security, right through to payroll and rates. The digital transformation project has been funded with $1 million grant from the state government council's transformation program, $888,000 from the Business Acceleration Fund, or BAP as it's affectionately known, and with a contribution from the 4 councils of $569,000 per annum across 3 financial years. We have already undertaken a procurement process for the delivery of building, planning and regulatory services and information solutions. To finalise the selection of solutions to meet the goals of the transformation program, a further procurement process was undertaken for the Enterprise Resource Planning Solution, or ERP, and that has been successfully completed. As a result, there is an officer recommendation to award contracts for the delivery of an ERP solution incorporating modules for finance, customer relationship management, or CRM as it's well known for, property and rates to Civica, with the option to include a human resource and payroll module as an additional to the original scope, tender scope. There is a recommendation on page 18 of tonight's agenda for your consideration, and thank you, Chair.
Thanks. I appreciate that summary. So, these projects are really important in getting bang for buck. Yeah. small council like this trying to implement something like this on their own, we just couldn't afford it. But when councils get together and share that, share the cost of developing, share the cost of licensing and all those sorts of things, we get something really that the sector knows will work, and we get it for a percentage of what we would otherwise pay. And I know that it's the way of the future, this shared solutions. I know in a previous council role, if you like, in another shire, that region was doing a similar thing, and what's the word? It's the Gestalt theory. The whole is worth more than just the value or the sum of the parts. So every time you work together, you actually get more out of it than you could have from your own dollar. So that's a great thing. Can you just for the benefit of those who may be watching, so we're a small shire and we've got bigger shires in the partnership. So how are funds apportioned?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The 4 councils in our sort of northeast cluster are all relatively small shires, but the portion of fund is allocated on a per capita rate basis, so that Murrindindi, for example, and Benalla are slightly larger than Mansfield and Strathbogie, so their contribution is slightly more. So we have done it equitably, and all the CEOs were quite satisfied, and that's all determined in the MOU that was struck some years ago before we commenced the project.
Terrific. I think that would be comforting for those in the community that we're paying our fair share, but not more than, as are the others. That's terrific. All right. So the recommendation, which is in 8 parts, is quite a mouthful, so I won't attempt to read it all. Otherwise, people will be sick of hearing me already. So, but people can read those on page 18 and 19, and I would move that the recommendation does become a resolution, and as such is carried. And I look forward to watching or hearing about the rollout and seeing the fruition of at least the early stages. So thank you very much, CEO. All right. 11.3.4 relates to Roads Pavement Rehabilitation Program 2023-24. Director Harvey, summary, if you may, or highlights, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Yourself and those watching the meeting may recall that at the last meeting we had a variation submitted for approval for this work, where we found some unsuitable materials whilst we were treating a section of the rehabilitation program, that the work that was approved at that time was performed, and during the quality checks, etc., that we do, in particular the proof rolls prior to placing additional layers, we identified at that time that additional treatment was required. Some excavation was done and found that we had additional free springs and that the treatment initially performed wasn't required. The initial treatment went to a depth of 300 to 500 millimetres. We've now going in significantly in excess of that, down to approximately 900 metres in places. This report is requesting the approval to continue to perform the appropriate works at that site, and to fund that, defer the works that haven't commenced on Spring Creek Road that's included in this contract as well as using unallocated funds from the Loxley and the Gambie Bridge and the sealed rehab program, which to provide sufficient budget to cover the expenditure. So unfortunately, the ground, as we've been working it, has worsened more and more and more. And you'll actually see if you go to the bottom of page 29, for those who have access to the agenda, the still water on that pavement in the photographs at the bottom of that page. Those photographs were taken. I think everyone will identify that today's the first rain we've had for considerable weeks. And this water itself is coming from underneath and coming up through, and you can see there, particularly in the photograph to the left, the dark grey materials, which is exhibiting zero or very, very low strength capabilities. And this report is asking for approval to posthumously to the variation that we performed for the work to repair this section of Creek Junction Road. If we had our time again, Chair, would we spend in excess of $300,000 on this particular road in comparison with some other roads within the network? Possibly not. However, it did require repair, as was identified as part of the initial investigation and asset management strategy. But unfortunately, as a consequence of the previous flooding rains and everything else, the springs we've been very active this year, a lot more active than previously. And I think if we hadn't have done this rehab, we would have definitely had to leave this in an unsealed condition until we got the funds to do this type of repair. So no matter whether we wanted to or not, we would have had to spend it.
Thanks, Director Hargrave. And yeah, it's one of those things. It was one of those unknown knowns, or is it known unknowns? But you take the top off the road and you don't know what's under it, particularly when you've had this kind of rain. And I saw the video, which you forwarded, and I wondered whether the bubbles in it reminded me of a mineral spring that was coming out at such speed. And so it's come to council because it's a variation that's above 10% of the original contract, and so I appreciate that it has come back. I appreciate it's not a great thing when we budget for something and we find we have to keep or go back to it more than once to fund the repair. But these those rains were exceptional rains, and they've done some exceptional damage. Or extreme damage, extreme weather events, extreme damage, and they were only just finding out really how extreme when the cap comes off the top of the road. So, and as you say, it's got to be fixed. We've opened it up. It's got to be fixed. We can't just grade over it and say, well, forget it until manna from heaven drops, because that ain't going to happen. So, given that, I agree with your assessment that it needs to be fixed, and therefore the recommendation to approve the variation and noting that the variation can be accommodated within the current budget, as explained on page 28, recommendations 1 and 2, they become the resolution, and as such is carried. And I look forward to seeing this one. A dry road, sealed road, and in good nick as soon as possible, as soon as humanly possible. Fingers crossed. Okay, 11.3.5 contracts, works and grants awarded under delegation the 1st to the 29th of February 2024, and this is over to you, Director Frank. People in governance, who's doing people in governance? That's over to you then. Chief Executive, is it? Or is it? Yeah, sorry, it's both Chief Executive and Director Sustainable Infrastructure.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. This report is our monthly report of just to advise council and the community of contracts, works and grants awarded under delegation. And just to also point out, this is just about transparency, so the community and council can understand what projects are being progressed that form part of the 2023-24 adopted council budget. There has been a number of contracts awarded this month. Trees for Tree Planting program, where they have only been able to be supplied through one supplier for an advanced trees. And we look forward to having those in the ground mid-autumn planting. And also Tarkham Road culvert design to just progress some of the works that we need to do to address drainage issues. There is a recommendation for your consideration on page 34 of tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief Executive. And look forward to seeing that tree planting program roll out and weather permitting, and the Tarkham Road culvert design. I'll have to get and have a look at Tarkham Road, but okay. So the recommendation on page 34 is that council note the contracts awarded under delegation, in short, and that no quick response grant application will be received during the reporting period. That recommendation becomes a resolution as such is carried. You now 11.4. Just bear with me. See what I'm going to this time. I'll try and get it right down. Yeah. Okay. All right. 11.4.1 new council policy, draft council policy, management policy. And can you give us some highlights, please, Chief Executive?
So thank you, and through you, Chair. So the first policy on tonight's agenda is for a new council policy. That is the draft policy, council policy management policy. It's quite a mouthful to get around. So essentially, organisational policies provide a really strong framework for council's business operations and a structure which ensures good governance, risk and compliance. This, as I mentioned earlier, is a new policy and is the overarching policy that governs how council creates, communicates and maintains all of our policy documents across council, consistent with the principles of good governance and the Local Government Act 2020. This policy ensures a clear and consistent approach in the development of council and management endorsed policy. There is a recommendation on page 38 of tonight's agenda for your consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief Executive. And I might add, having worked in organisations of varied kinds over the years, and always been interested for a range of reasons. One, because you had to, but two, because I'm a bit of a policy nerd, always interested in the development of policies. It's amazing how many organisations don't have a policy on how they develop their policy. And if you don't have a policy on how you develop a policy, you can end up with some, like trying to build I don't know, like if you're trying to build a racehorse by committee, that's where you get a camel. And the kind of, some of the policy disasters that I've seen. And so this is something that's important, puts a framework around how policies are developed and how they're managed and consistently applied, reviewed, and so on. So it is a good inclusion. So the recommendation on page 38 is in two parts: adopt the draft policy management policy and advertise on the website and in council's newspapers and social media pages. So the recommendation becomes a resolution and as such is carried. Okay. Now we have another policy. And Chief Executive, could we have a summary of 11.4.2 new council policy draft councillor briefing policy? This will interest those who want to be councillors.
It certainly will, and thank you through you, Chair. The application of the draft council briefing policy is primarily to provide a clear process for the operation of councillor briefings and means that council provides transparent governance and strong leadership, demonstrating excellence in the way we do business by being innovative and responsive, ensures that councillors have access to timely and detailed information and make informed decisions in the best interests of the municipality on matters that will or are likely to require a formal decision at council sometime into the future. And it also ensures good contemporary governance through accountable and transparent practice, appropriate risk management and continuous improvement. It's really important to note, Chair, that the councillor briefing sessions do not provide transparency in decision making, and as such, there is no delegated authority for council to make decisions that are in these briefings forums. Those decision makings always come to an open public council meeting. These forums essentially just are to provide councillors with the opportunity to seek clarification, provide feedback on proposals and reports that, as I mentioned earlier, will later come to council, receive updates, and if necessary, be provided with additional information on matters before council. Council officers may also use these forums to advise councillors and receive direction on issues which they may have delegated authority or which may also come to council at a later date. Chair, there is a recommendation on page 43 of tonight's agenda for your consideration.
Thanks, Leah. And yes, this is quite important, and as I think it was raised in the local paper last week about, I suppose how decisions are made here. Those briefings are essential to the decisions that are made here, but are not where the decisions are made. They are the briefings are the opportunity, as you said, to ask questions, to become fully conversant with the issue at hand, and where appropriate, to give direction where there may be more options than the one staring us in the face. So to have to spell out what the briefings are about, to have a policy position on it, is good governance. It's going to set the next council up appropriately, and thank you for bringing that to the briefing recently and getting it developed. I thought it was a good policy. I thought no policy stands on its own forever. I know we've got a 2-year review period here. There's always unintended consequences, and you can't possibly ask all of the questions or think about all of the hypotheticals that may apply with any policy. You've got a little bit suck it and see. I think it's a good policy. I think it should be put in place. There's a review schedule, and I guess there'll be some feedback from a group of people after October on how that policy works. So that said, the recommendation on page 43 becomes a resolution. That's in 2 parts there, about adopting and then again advertising that policy. That becomes the resolution, and as such is carried. Council policy review in relation to draft tourism related directional signage policy, an important part of the municipality's raison d'etre, tourism. So, sorry, I should.
John.
Oh, no, it's over to you, Director Harvey. Could you give us a summary, please?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. This policy came up for review this financial year. It relates to all of the, in particular, the white on brown finger signs and the larger tourism signs. There is quite a detailed process through which applicants can apply to the council for these types of signage, and this policy informs both the applicant and the officers, those that they need to refer the matter to if it happens to be not a road under control of the council, but Vic roads. And in fact, what those signs need to look like, have to look like, how the responsibilities for the individuals, for the maintenance and the cost of the signs, etc. We've made some minor grammatical changes to the policy from the previous year's policy, and the recommendation there, as per page 48, is for your consideration.
Thanks, Director Harvey. So essentially, this policy has just been slightly updated, and it makes sure that we comply with the rest of the state. We're consistent, and our organisation has a consistent approach that are within the state guidelines as well, and apply to the national standard.
That is correct, as well as informing those that are looking for these signs how to go about obtaining them, and under what rules they will be assessed upon.
Yep.
Right.
Good. Okay. All right. The recommendation, as said, was on page 48. 2 parts: adopt the draft tourism-related directional signage policy, and again place the policy on the council's website, publications and newspaper columns, and so on. So the recommendation on page 48 becomes a resolution, and as such is carried. All right. Page 52, we have 11.4.4 Council Policy Review Draft Roadside Fatality Memorials Policy. Yes, again, Director Harvey has said.
Thank you. Thank you.
To be discussing.
Thank you, and through you. And this is a reasonably sensitive but serious matter. Again, this is an existing policy that's been reviewed as part of its scheduled reviewing. The minor grammatical changes have not changed the manner in which the policy will be interpreted or, in fact, administered. These memorials are really required to be put through this process, not just for the bureaucratic record of or control over these types of facilities, but for their maintenance going forward, respect from our ops group and other road users, and to actually place people who are actually wanting to gather at certain times of the year in remembrance, such that they aren't placed at risk or placing other members of the public at risk. Again, as I said, this is just a review of the existing policy, of which some minor wordsmithing was done just to repair some typographical errors. And the recommendations here on page 52, that the council adopt the roadside fatality memorials policy and place the roadside fatality memorials policy on council's website, along with the publication of the notice in the council's paper, is there for your consideration.
Thank you, Director Harvey. And we see too many roadside memorials. You travel on enough highways, and they're everywhere, and it's a sad state of affairs. I don't really want to talk much more about it because it is a sensitive subject and it is somewhat saddening. But yes, we do need to have a policy. We need to maintain that policy, review it, make sure that it continues to achieve what it sets out to do, the fact that it's reviewed at this time and is coming to the meeting tonight is a good thing. Page 52, recommendation, adopt the policy and publicise as with the earlier policies. The recommendation becomes a resolution and as such carried. One of the other things that happens at councils a lot is review of delegations. So we're moving to 11.4.5 S5 instrument. Excuse me. Instrument of delegation to the Chief Executive Officer update. And I understand Strathbogie does this twice a year.
That is correct, and thank you through you, Chair. One of the key instruments of delegation that facilitates efficient and effective council operations is the S5 instrument, through which council delegates the bulk of its powers to the Chief Executive Officer. This instrument identifies decisions that cannot be made by the CEO as prescribed by the Local Government Act, such as amending the council plan, expenditure of council funds outside certain parameters, and particularly that of the adopted budget, amending local laws or the governance rules, approving the borrowing of money, or amending or creating policies required to be adopted through a council resolution. The existing instrument of delegation from council to the CEO was approved last year in October. As you mentioned, we undertake 6 monthly reviews of just to ensure that we are responding to changing circumstances. However, I can advise you that there's been no substantive changes to the S5 instrument of delegation since that time. The authorisation of these delegations ensures to the CEO ensures that the ongoing efficiency, as I mentioned, and a clear legal framework for which day-to-day decisions are made, excluding those areas which the CEO has no delegated power to amend. The instrument also enables the elected council to focus on their strategic matters rather than operational decisions in accordance with the Act. Chair, there is a recommendation on page 56 of tonight's agenda for your consideration. Thank you,
Chief Executive. And this and some of the other delegations that we're going to discuss further in the meeting are probably good things for anyone who out there who wants to think about running for council, for them to understand, because we do at times talk to people who perhaps have some confusion in what the role is, but these delegations go some way to explaining that. Operations, council says, can you go and do this? We'll give you a budget and you can spend up to so much to get this done, to get that done, get that done. And as you said, the Act sections off those things that you cannot do. And of course, a council can take back delegations that are given if needed. But if delegations were not there, then there's no way on earth that a council, any council, doesn't matter how good they were, could actually get the stuff done. So those delegations are absolutely vital, as you say, for the efficient undertaking of the responsibilities of the council. And I think in previous council I was on, we only looked at them manually, and I think it's a good thing to have a look 6 months. It costs nothing to be careful and to be current. So I think that's a good thing. recommendations on page 56. It's a 4-part recommendation. I won't read it all out, but I will say that the recommendation on that page becomes the resolution, and as such is carried. And I'll be here for the next review. Yes. Yes. All right. Now, moving on, there are, as I pointed out, there are other delegations, and 11.4.6 is the S6 delegation, instrument of delegation to members of staff. I deal with the chief executive tonight. Yes, of course. So a brief highlight, if you'd like, chief executive, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. This council to officer instrument of delegation is a way in which council again enables day-to-day operational decisions to be made under a raft of legislation and local laws to be made. Without this delegation of power, all decisions, as you mentioned, Chair, earlier, would need to be made by a resolution of council, which will become untenable and unsustainable due to the volume of decisions made by the administration on behalf of council every day. This instrument specifically provides for delegations that cannot be sub-delegated by the Chief Executive Officer. That is, they must be directly delegated from council to the subject matter experts. The delegations specifically relate to legislation such as the Planning and Environment Act 1987, the Roads Management Act 2004, and the Environmental Protection Act 1970. This draft instrument before council reflects the current organisational structure. There are conditions against some of the delegated powers requiring notification of the CEO or council through written notice within a specified period of time, and this ensures transparency and that the information flows between the delegated officers and council. A public register of delegations is maintained by the CEO under the Act and council's public transparency policy. So this instrument, once signed, will be available for inspection by the public upon request. Chair, there is a recommendation on page 60 of tonight's agenda for your consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, CEO. And that's a good point that you make. That it's good to highlight what you've just said about the instrument being publicised and being available for the public to view. And it goes back to my point about those who are interested in becoming potential councillors might want to have a look at that just to see how things do work. And, you know, for example, if you think about the breadth of roles that are undertaken within a council, there are a number of specialist tasks that you wouldn't just, not anyone could just do that role. And I'm looking at one at the moment, and you mentioned a number of the breadth of acts that are included, but I'm looking at one here, the Domestic Animals Act 1994. So one of the delegations is the power to declare a dog to be a menacing dog. You know, so someone has to be given that power. There are a range of those things that you wouldn't necessarily think of, and some of these things could become quite sensitive and controversial. The power to direct by written order that the food premises be put into a clean and sanitary condition, or go further. And if we think back to what happened at a food premises in Dandenong a few years ago, where under delegation someone closed the business down, essentially, and I think that's still undergoing litigation. So these are pretty serious matters that people get involved in, or necessarily get involved in, and those powers need to be directed. And as you pointed out, imagine if a council didn't have the capacity to delegate all of those decisions. a meeting would go for, 48 weeks, let alone 48 minutes or 48 hours. It just doesn't bear thinking about. So very important, and I urge potential councillors to have a look at the delegations, and that will really describe the breadth of things that council does or may do or could do. The recommendation was on page 60, and I'll move that recommendation, which is, well, it's on page 60 and 61. That's in 4 parts. I'll move that recommendation becomes a resolution and as such is carried. And we now have 11.4.7 S11, S11A and S11B, instruments of appointment and authorisation update. And again, I think this will come to you, Chief Executive. Yes, because I have some, we have some.
Certainly, and thank you through the Chair. Regular reviews are required to be made to the S11 Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation, the S11A Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation of Planning and Environment 1987, and the S11B Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation Environment Protection Act 2017, to ensure that these instruments are reflective again of the current organisation structure. It's important to note that the Local Government Act 1989 is still active in relation to the appointment of authorised officers and not the 2020 Act. These instruments give specified officers the ability to enforce legislation and are essential to ensuring any enforcement action is undertaken on behalf of council in a legal and robust manner. The instruments appoint key officers to roles and positions including the Municipal Building Surveyor, the Municipal Emergency Management Officer, or NEMO as it's affectionately known, and the appointment of the Councillor Code of Conduct Officer. The updated instruments, once approved by Council, will remain in force until the next date update is prepared in response to legislative changes, changes in position titles, or staff changes. So, Chair, there is a recommendation in 6 parts on page 65 and 66 of tonight's agenda for your consideration.
Thank you, Chief Executive, and what the Chief Executive has just explained, highlights how important these instruments are, because if we don't keep on top of these, then we can't do some of these things. Simple as that. And therefore cannot perform the role in those particular areas. So very important. And I just want to check this one, well, correct me if I'm wrong, this one will be updated anytime one of these officers leaves the organisation or changes role out of that particular role. Yeah. So rather than wait 6 months, this one's a living document. Yeah. Okay. Again, very, very important, and something also that those considering running for council might want to have a look at if they haven't got enough light reading already. Okay. So on page 65 and 66 is a 6-page recommendation, and I won't read it all out, but it is there to be found, and I would move that recommendation becomes a resolution and as such is carried. And good job keeping up with that one. That's a task. All right, we go to 11.4.8, S18, Instrument of Sub-Delegation under the Environment Protection Act 2017. Update. And again, Chief Executive, if you might.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. And this is the last instrument of delegation for this evening's agenda. So this sub-delegation under the Environmental Protection Act and the Environment Protection Regulations 2021 came into effect on the 1st of July 2021. Under the new EP Act, the scope of local government's role as a regulator has not changed, but there has been changes to the laws and powers of local governments, including the delegation of powers from the Environmental Protection Authority to councils. The S18 sub-delegates council powers delegated to it by the EPA to members of council staff. This instrument provides for delegation that cannot be sub-delegated by the Chief Executive Officer. That is, they must be directly delegated from council to the relevant subject matter experts. The delegations relate to specialised legislation and, as I said, mentioned earlier, in this case, the Environmental Protection Act 1970 and 2021. The S18 instrument of subdelegation is updated 6 monthly, again, ensuring that the currency of positions within the organisation are reflected and any changes to state government legislative frameworks. Again, a public register of delegations is maintained by the CEO under the Act and Council's public transparency policy, and this instrument, once signed, will be available for inspection by the public upon request. Chair, there is a recommendation on page 69 for board. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. And very important one again. Failure to keep these up to date can really impact the council's ability to keep up with its lawful responsibilities. And again, a good one for those who can't get to sleep. No, I shouldn't say that. For those who might consider becoming a councillor to understand, because these are directly delegated from the council to those roles. So as the Chief Executive pointed out, the recommendation, the three-part one, is on page 69, and that recommendation becomes a resolution and as such is carried. And moving now, change of pace to the minutes of the Strathbogie Shire Council Audit and Risk Committee, item 11.4.9, confirm minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 27th of November 2023. And the minutes were, wait, excuse me. Yes. CEO, you might have some highlights for me on this one as well.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Just for context, the Strathbogie Shire Audit and Risk Committee is a committee appointed by Council and pursuant to Section 53 of the Local Government Act 2020. The primary objective of the Audit and Risk Committee is to assist Council in the effective conduct of its responsibilities for compliance with Council policies, legislation, sound financial reporting and financial management, oversight of risk management, including the Strategic Risk Register, good corporate governance, maintaining a reliable system of internal controls, and facilitating the organisation's ethical development. So essentially, they perform the oversight or watchdog function across all of the Council's business operations, which helps ensure the best interests of the municipal community are achieved through Council operations and decisions. This report presents the confirmed minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 27th of November 2023, endorsed by the Audit and Risk Committee at its meeting held just recently on the 1st of March 2024, being the first meeting of the year. An extensive range of key Business items were considered at this committee meeting, like all other committee meetings, and these are detailed for interested community members on page 73 of tonight's agenda papers. The confirmation of the above meeting are presented for council for noting, and Chair, there is a recommendation on page 73 of tonight's agenda for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. And having attended the most recent meeting of the Audit Committee, I was delighted to see how it is such a high-functioning Audit Committee. Some very talented and committed people on that committee, and, you know, a very well-structured agenda, and they get through their business with efficiency but care. They don't miss a thing, and, you know, which is great, because, as you said, they are the watchdog. They have helped with the internal auditors and the external auditors, and along with the reappointment recently of two members for a longer period and a new member, I think council will get value from this audit committee for a long time to come. And I wasn't there obviously for the meeting that we're talking about here, but I look forward to receiving their minutes during my tenure here and participating in those meetings because they're an impressive bunch. That said, I'll move that the recommendation that council receive a note to confirm minutes of the Strathbogie Shire Council Audit and Risk Committee meeting on the 27th November 2023 becomes a resolution and as such is carried. Thank you. And I believe we're going to ask you to give us a summary again, Chief Executive Solomon. 11.4.10 Strathbogie Shire Council Victorian Electoral Structure Review Outcome. Over to you, CEO.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So the Local Government Act 2020, sections 14 through to 16, introduced changes to the electoral representation review process, and the Act required that a review of the electoral representation models must be conducted and implemented prior to the October 2024 general election for all councils, where councils were not comprised of single member wards. Strathbogie was one of the 39 councils that were reviewed in 2023. An independent electoral structure review panel was appointed by the Minister for Local Government, and after their review, by considering whether council had enough the appropriate number of councillors, whether it should be subdivided or unsubdivided, and considering things such as research, voter growth or decline, and public submissions, the panel recommended that Strathbogie adopt an unsubdivided electoral structure represented by 7 councillors. The advice was submitted to the Minister for Local Government as required by the terms of reference of an electoral representation advisory panel and the Act. The Minister for Local Government supported the panel's decision and announced the new electoral structure for Strathbogie Shire on the Thursday, 15th of February. In accordance, Strathbogie Council, as I mentioned earlier, will change to an unsubdivided electoral structure with 7 councillors effective as at the 2024 October council election. Chair, there's a recommendation on page 78 for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. And I'm not going to say too much about this. I've been quoted in the local newspaper as to my thoughts on this, and I respect the decision of the minister based on the report from the review panel, and hope. I think it will, but I hope that such a model will be a platform for good governance going forward from the next elections. We are only noting, so we have no power to make to have any difference or to see any difference to that to that model. So let's make it work. So the recommendation on page 78 that council note the outcome of the Strathbogie Shire electoral structure review, acknowledging that Strathbogie will move to an unsubdivided electoral structure with 7 councillors effective October 2024, becomes a resolution and as such is carried. Okay. Now, the next one, 11.5, governance and customer service. 11.5.1, reappointment of administrator. And I might just make the point that people might say, oh, this is about you. Why aren't you declaring a conflict? And I'll say there's 2 things. The first thing is that it's a recommendation to note what the minister has done, not what the council has or could do. So it's just noting an action of somebody else. And the second thing is, if I did declare a conflict of interest, we'd never talk about it while I'm here because there's no one else to sit in here and talk about it. So, but the first part, yes, I know, Tom, you would. But the first part is probably the more germane. The fact is that it's noting rather than actually having any part in it other than saying yes to the minister. Yes, Minister. Okay, so did we have? Yes, we have you listed to give us a summary. And I don't want to talk about myself.
No, but I can. Thank you, and through you, Chair. This is just to advise and formally note through a council meeting that on the 7th of March 2024, the Minister for Local Government, the Honourable Melissa Horn MP, Minister, announced the reappointment of Mr Peter Stevenson as Administrator for Strathbogie Council effective from the 7th of March 2024 until 6 a.m. on the day of the October 2024 council elections, which will be held on the 26th of October. The notice of orders in council affirming the appointment were published in the Victorian Government Gazette on the 7th of March 2024 and are attached to this report. This follows the Minister's announcement on the 5th of December 2023, where Strathbogie Shire Council elected members were suspended under Section 257 of the Local Government Act for the remainder of its term, and Mr Stevenson was appointed as interim administrator until 12 midnight on the 6th of March 2024. As administrator, as Peter mentioned earlier, Mr Stevenson will continue to provide support, leadership and strategic oversight of council operations. It's important to note that under Section 230 of the Local Government Act, Mr Peter Stevenson has, as administrator, constitutes the council and as such performs all functions, powers and duties. In accordance with the terms and conditions set by the Minister for Local Government, attached to the report, Mr Stevenson will be remunerated at $254,300 per annum, inclusive of superannuation, for a part-time 3-day-a-week statutory role, plus reimbursement of reasonable out-of-pocket expenses incurred in exercising the functions, powers and duties of administrator. There is a recommendation on page 78 that notes the minister's decisions and the terms and conditions of tonight's agenda for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Much appreciated. I'll say very little, except I'm glad I have the Minister's confidence and I look forward to the rest of my time with Strathbogie Shire. That's all I'll say, other than that the recommendation becomes a resolution and as such is carried. Moving to a very important report, and that's 11.5.2, the monthly performance report, because that's how we see how we're travelling. And there's a lot going on, and I think that's over to you, Director Frampton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The March 2024 monthly performance report includes reports relating to the building department, the planning department, customer inquiries, waste management reporting, transfer station data from February, actioning of council report resolutions, outstanding actions of council resolutions, review of council policies and adoption of new policies, and records of informal council briefings and meetings. This report provides transparency to you as the administrator and as council, and to the broader community around how council is performing across a range of its functions and services. We do try to simplify the reports as much as possible to give you the information you need. They can be a bit overwhelming when you're trying to work through them. But I think in terms of the highlights, you can continue to see strong planning performance through our planning department, relatively standard and stable performance through our building activities and functions. The throughput around customer inquiries, which is always good to see where we're tracking well and where we're not tracking so well. That's a big focus for us at the moment too, to ensure that we're closing the loop with all customers and all as it should be. The other one that I know that many members of the community are quite interested and passionate about is our waste management reporting and things like our curbside diversion rates and organic contamination. So you can see that is relatively stable. I think in the graph there seems to be a very big outlier back from 21-22 in the month of February when we're looking at those reports. So I don't know what happened that year, but certainly looking at 23-24, it is very stable. Although, you know, there's always more that can be done in that space, and we continue all of our proactive education. Again, transfer data, and then you can also see the number of resolutions made by council and those that are still outstanding. So there is a, sorry, just have to go back to my report. There is a recommendation on page 89 of tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Director Frampton. And this, as you said, that report covers a fair amount of different kinds of activity, but it does show, I suppose it shows the breadth of our operations, but also shows how busy things get. And I've got to say, from my brief experience here, I can see that it's always all shoulders to the wheel, and people doing their best, and I'm sure with I've also seen some system improvements. The CEO and her team have been putting in system improvements in my short time here, and I'm sure what's not already in the green will soon get there for your efforts. So thank you for that. And you pointed out, I think, Director Frampton, page 89, yes. Simple recommendation that the report be accepted, and that recommendation becomes a resolution and is duly accepted. Thank you. All right. And thank you to everybody for their work. Now, moving to notice of motion, we don't have any. Notice of rescission, we don't have any. Urgent business, we don't have any. But what we do have is one item of confidential business. And I declare that the following item, Chief Executive Officer Performance Review, March 2023 to March 2024, to be confidential in accordance with Section 66(2)(a) and Part 1, Section 3, Definitions of Local Government Act 2020. F, personal information being information which, if released, would result in the unreasonable disclosure of information about any person or their personal affairs. So this ground has been applied to this matter as it relates to the Chief Executive Officer's annual performance review, and I have authorised a confidential business certificate, which is also an attachment to tonight's agenda. So what this means is that Council, in conformance with Section 66(2)(a) and the definitions for confidential matters under Part 1, Section 3, the Local Government Act 2020, 2020, the Act resolved to close the meeting to members of the public for the purpose of considering items related to Chief Executive Officer Performance Review, March 2023 to 2024. And I move that that recommendation becomes a resolution is carried, and that means that the public gallery is going to close and live streaming of the meeting will cease at 7:35 p.m. So I'd ask that those in the gallery see how that door works, Tom. Well, welcome back. I move that the council reopen the meeting to the public, and that's the resolution. It's carried. So the meeting is open again, and what we're doing now is confirming confidential business decisions, and CB1 is Chief Executive Officer Performance Review, March 2023 to 2024. For the purposes of transparency, Council resolved to release the below information of the confidential business report in relation to the Chief Executive Officer Performance Review for the period March 2023 to March 2024, and this is as follows. Council has in place a Chief Executive Officer Employment and Remuneration Policy, updated November 2023, which sets the parameters for assessing performance, contractual obligations and remuneration. With the suspension of Council on the 5th of December 2023, the Chief Executive Officer Employment and Remuneration Committee comprised the Interim Administrator, Peter Stevenson, and independent member, Wendy Jones. This committee's role is to review, discuss and recommend to Council matters required by Section 44 of the Local Government Act 2020 in relation to the Chief Executive Officer. The performance review period of March 2023 to March 2024 has presented numerous challenges, including governance issues and the impacts of significant increased cost in materials and services, a tight labour market and continued severe weather events. Despite these obstacles, the CEO has maintained a strong organisation and achieved significant results. The CEO provided comprehensive commentary to each key performance indicator, demonstrating a strong performance over the reporting period. And the committee agreed with the CEO's self-assessment ratings and noted there were no areas of concern surrounding the CEO's performance. And the council also resolved to release the following information publicly. 1, note the recommendations of the Chief Executive Officer Employment and Remuneration Committee following the completion of the annual performance review process and acknowledge that the CEO has met the performance criteria as detailed in attachment 1. 2, approve the key performance areas and professional development approach recommended by the Chief Executive Officer Employment and Remuneration Committee for the period March 2024 to 31 December 2024, noting that the upcoming reporting period is to align with the calendar year. And 3, after undertaking a benchmarking exercise with like-sized councils, increase the Chief Executive Officer's remuneration package. And the recommendation is that the decisions made in camera be ratified by Council, and that recommendation becomes a resolution that is carried. Thank you, Chief Executive. I'll say no more. The next meeting of Strathbogie Shire Council is scheduled to be held on Tuesday, 16th of April 2024, here at the Euroa Community Conference Centre. Thanks for attending and thanks for viewing. There being no further business, the meeting closed at